They say, it never hurts to ask. But what are some examples where it hurts to ask? What happened to your baby? I thought you were pregnant. In college, some friends and I got caught smoking weed in a park by a park ranger. He was pretty cool and it seemed like we were going to get away with a warning until my one friend piped up and said, "You're not going to call the real cops, are you?" Dude's attitude towards us did a 180 real quick. You see this gun? You see this badge? I am the real cops. As a server, where's that other woman you always come in with? The name of someone you've known for a while. Asking someone to repeat themselves a third time. And it's never anything important. The other person usually ends up screaming, "The grass is really wet over here." Between one of my friends and a random person at the blood bank, I was donating and we were going to go get lunch afterwards. Stranger: "Are you going to donate to?" Him: "I would if I could, but medically I can't." Stranger: "Why? You got HIV or something?" Him: "He did in fact live with HIV." Any question from a supposed authority or expert that reveals a complete lack of understanding of the matter in question. E.g., a judge who once asked why the YouTube video under evidence could not be printed for him to review. There's nothing worse than the internal screaming when you realize that your work and company's reputation is now completely hostage to someone who hasn't the faintest idea how what you do works. Pre-COVID, at work they would often have mobile services like blood donations parked beside our building. One day I was walking with a woman at work who wanted to talk about things while getting some fresh air. There was a long period of silence when I couldn't think of anything to talk about, and I saw we were walking up to the edge of the building and a large mobile was parked there. So I asked her, "Have you ever done that before?" She looked at the mobile parked there and back at me, her face turned bright red. "That is a very personal thing to ask," she said, face still bright red. "Really?" I said as we walked next to it. Then I noticed this wasn't a blood mobile. It was a mammogram mobile. I spent a lot of time over explaining myself. Are we more than friends? One of my friends has a sister that is battling cancer. I always want to ask how she's doing, but I fear the worst. Also, I would feel bad if I didn't ask. So, what's the age of consent here? I had a friend in elementary school who was putting on a particularly heavy dose of sunscreen. Some kid asked him why he's putting on so much. He said, "'Cause my mom has skin cancer," and the room just became silent. My 13-year-old daughter killed herself. And so many people asked how. Edit. Thank you all for your kind words. It has been 13 years since she left and I am in a good place. I've accepted that you don't heal but you learn to carry it. I've also learned to appreciate all of the years that I had her in my life and all of the wonderful memories we created. And to focus less on the experiences we were all deprived of, especially her. I do have an unhealthy worry of her siblings, and freak out if they aren't quick to respond. I hope someday they'll forgive my craziness. What are you gonna do, stab me? My friend's spouse is of Asian descent. My friend is Italian. Their kids take after the spouse. My friend gets asked all the time if it was easy to adopt the kids. Even school administrators have asked, "What country were you adopted from?" to the kids themselves. My friend said people usually just walk away embarrassed after they learn they're biological, but that one woman said, "Well, can you blame me for asking?" Yes, Patricia. Was she better than me? Just don't do it. When you ask a woman if she's pregnant. So, do you guys do random drug tests? When are you going to have children? Or any variation. Be ready to be told they've lost a baby, infertility, sexless marriage, etc. Just don't. Edit. Glad to see much empathy. Also, thanks for the silver. Could we check for gonorrhea and other STDs now when I'm being tested for chlamydia? I did not know it would upgrade the procedure from simply peeing in a cup to getting a stick up my urethra. It hurts to ask for help a lot of the time. When people respond badly, it makes it worse. Is it in yet? As a teenager, I worked in a grocery store. I saw a customer whose back was to me struggling with all their items, so I asked, "Do you need a hand?" The man turned around and I could see he was missing a hand. There was just a stub there, that is why he was struggling. He was a good sport and said, "Yes, it seems I do," lifting his arm missing the hand in the air. Asking paramedics, cops, whoever to tell you about the worst thing they ever saw. Teacher, is there any homework for tonight? Whoa, since your dad is already dead, what are you going to do if your mom dies? Asked by a drunk friend in college. Repeatedly. It seemed more like they were trying to get a reaction out of me than anything else. Had no recollection of it later, and they were on the verge of tears when I told them they hurt my feelings, because they felt so shitty about it. Senior NCO. Alright people, I need 3 volunteers. Nub E2. What for chief? Senior NCO. Great, now I just need 2 more volunteers. What's our employer's policy on drug tests? Hey boss, I got an offer from another company for more money. Any way you can match? Answer, no. We will open a requisition to fill your position. Quote. New job, someone else already accepted the position first. Be careful when using job offers as leverage. You almost immediately take yourself out of leadership's long-term plans. Edit for clarity. This was mostly in reference to people actively getting offers to request, demand a raise. This is extremely risky, especially if you have no intention of moving jobs. Contrary to what many are saying below, it is very common for large companies to interview and attempt to hire multiple people for the same position. Many of these companies have several of the same position available. New teams and departments are created quite often. About a month and a half ago, I found out that my favorite college professor died, unexpectedly. He was an awesome person, and honestly I owe my career to him. A friend of mine told me. I asked what happened, which I think is a normal reaction. He didn't know. It wasn't divulged until a month later that he committed suicide. He was one of the most outgoing, selfless, ambitious individuals I have ever known. He cared so much about everyone else. I never would have guessed he suffered from depression. I once asked for a pay increase. My boss then asked what I was on, and I told him. He said, "Oh, you shouldn't be on that much." I asked, boy or girl? To a woman with a pink-clad baby. I barely survived. Asking someone you love why they chose another person over you. Before a date, are we going to have sex tonight? Firefighter, paramedic here. We generally hate the, what's the worst call you've ever ran? Think of the worst things you can possibly imagine, and someone had to respond to that call. The sick, the injured, every trauma, every overdose, every suicide, every evil deed done by one person to another person, every accident, every dead kid, husband, wife, father, mother. So when you ask, what's the worst call you've ever ran, we now have to relive the worst calls, moments of our lives as we try to deflect or crack a joke. I hate that question. When's the baby due? I've put on some weight. Are you sure? You're huge. Wakes up 3 days later. Boss majorly fucks up on a project, and sells it for 50% less than what he should have. Boss. Contact the customer and ask him for a change order, for double the current contract value of the project. Me. In pain. Okay. Don't ask someone when is the baby due unless they look like it's due tomorrow. Some people are just fat. Also, don't ask someone if they're trans. If you're right, you told them they don't pass. If you're wrong, you told them they look like the opposite sex. Either way, not something people like to have pointed out. Are you always this annoying? One day back when I was at school, I didn't have my phone on silent, and it went off during class. The teacher thought he'd make an example out of me and ask who the text was from. I replied, my mum. She's in hospital with cancer. He shut right up and went back to the lesson. She was being treated for stage 4 bowel cancer. She had a 25% prognosis, so naturally everyone was on edge. That was almost 15 years ago, and fortunately she's still with us, and got the all clear some time ago. Asking your partner if they've been unfaithful. If they have and they admit it, it hurts you to know that. If they have and they deny it, then you're still suspicious, but you'll feel bad for hurting them by asking, or more likely be made to feel bad. If they haven't, then you'll hurt them by exposing your lack of trust. I'm not saying it's wrong to ask, but there's very rarely an outcome that doesn't hurt. Truth is that if you feel you need to ask, then the relationship is suffering from some serious trust issues in any case. Officer, is this more weed than would be considered for personal use? Asking anything while having social anxiety. Probably asking your date if she's a virgin. Regardless of whether she is or not, that question screams creepy from a mile away, and she is not going to want to sleep with you. I've never seen a guy ask it without this weird tentative smirk either. It's super uncomfortable. Why don't you love me? Asking veterans if they've ever killed anyone. Can you stop drilling into my tooth? As an asexual person, I've been asked if it's because I was raped as a kid. Like what the actual Christ drives someone to ask another that? Asking someone you're crazy about, who isn't interested in you, if they want to go out sometime. Shit hurts. How did she die?